Good afternoon, everyone. This is Donna here from Rotary Matters, Masterton, and I'm on Arrow FN 92.7. I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas and have had a very happy and safe New Year, bringing the new year in. What I was thinking today, and I'm on my own, so there's no guests, so you're just stuck with me, is we tend to put so much pressure on ourselves over Christmas, and I have been a social worker for many, many years and have a degree in psychology, so I guess my passion is why people do what they do and how they can help themselves when, if things aren't particularly great for them. So I thought we could talk about some stress management. Usually when the New Year's come in, we tend to have, the thoughts in our mind of what are we going to do? That thing of setting goals and your New Year's resolution type thing. So this session is going to be on, firstly we're going to talk a bit about stress management and how we can put that in place for ourselves through the year. Also things like setting goals. How do you do that appropriately and realistically so that they're effective and for you? So we're going to talk about goal setting as well. So I hope you enjoy the show. So sit down, relax and enjoy. But first of all, and I know Christmas is over, but I brought my Bublé CD. So we're going to have a little bit of Bublé Christmas, and so I'll put a piece of music on and then we will enjoy a bit of Michael Bublé, and we'll come back to you shortly with me.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look at the 5 and 10. It's glistening once again with candy canes and silver lanes that glow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store, but the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. A pair of hop-along boots and a pistol that shoots is the wish of Barney and Ben. Dolls that'll talk and will go for a walk is the hope of Janice and Jen. And Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. There's a tree in the Grand Hotel, one in the park as well. It's the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the bells will start, and the thing that'll make them ring is the carol that you sing right within your heart. Beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store, but the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. Sure, it's Christmas once more.
Oh, doesn't he have the most beautiful voice? I just, want to sink into his voice. Just makes you feel really cruisy. Now, I hope that you had a very cruisy Christmas. I hope you didn't have a Mrs. Spray and Wiper call him Christmas, and that you're feeling quite relaxed for the new year. But if you're not, I thought we'd talk about stress management. So, stress management. So the thing with stress, it's important to understand what's happening in your brain. And I think if you do understand what's happening in your brain, you have much more idea on how to deal with it, because it's a physical thing that's actually happening. So once you've worked that out, you can put physical things in place to manage it. So the brain has lots of parts, but one main part is called the limbic system, which is right in the middle of your brain. Now, it's your emotional part of your brain. Now, it's right in the middle, and that's quite a great idea because it's nice and protected. We need our emotions to keep us alive, for survival. Emotions is critical to us. So that's tucked right in the middle. And then another part of the brain, it's the prefrontal lobe, which is right across the front of your forehead. And that is kind of your thinking part of the brain. That's the part that does decision making, knowing right from wrong, all of those sorts of things that make us human, and make us more intellectual humans. So, when we are stressed, the right from wrong thinking prefrontal lobe turns off, and we are dealing only within our emotional brain. Now, we all know that when we're stressed, you've got the emotions that just flare up, and you don't think straight, and you don't remember things, and so the physical thing that's happening in your brain is that the prefrontal lobe turns off, and your limbic zone, which is your emotional part, kind of flares up, and that's the fight, flight and freeze part of your brain. So in order to try and keep your prefrontal lobe on, which is what you want, because that's the part of the brain that keeps the limbic, keeps us helping make good decisions and knowing right from wrong, etc. So you want to settle your limbic zone down and keep it nice and level, and so that your prefrontal lobe stays on and doesn't turn off. Now, the reason we have emotions is for survival. So if our brain thinks that we're not going to survive, hence it will jump into the fight, flight or freeze process. So the idea is to keep your brain thinking that you are okay and things are fine and you will survive. Now, in caveman days, this was critical, of course, because they had dinosaurs and Tyrannosaurus rexes coming out. So, the chance of not surviving was quite high. But now we get stressed with emails and bills and relatives coming to visit. So, it's a whole lot different than what our brain was designed to do in keeping us alive, to catch the dinosaurs, to feed our family without dying. So that's hence why our reactions to stresses are the same as they would be if you were confronting a dinosaur, when actually you're checking your emails and getting stressed by the bills and accounts that are accruing, or something that somebody has said that's upsetting. So you have to, and sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. You have to tell your brain that you are okay. Now, how do you do that? Well, one of the best things, the first thing to do is to breathe, because what happens when we don't when we're stressed is we forget to breathe, or we forget to breathe properly. So we either really pant quickly, or we long and slow. We don't breathe properly, so we don't get enough oxygen up to our brain, and our brain goes, oh my gosh, what's going on? We're not going to survive, and immediately turns the prefrontal lobe off because it thinks we don't need it, and starts working in the limbic zone. So nice deep breaths right down through your whole lungs into your diaphragm. Even if you just do 3 or 4 nice deep breaths each morning, just when you wake up or when you're driving to work in the car, and that will set you up for the rest of the day. Your brain will say, it's okay, we've got plenty of oxygen here, their body is ticking along, things are okay. So breathing, number 1, critical. Number 2 is to have a pump bottle or a not a plastic one, because we don't advocate plastic now. Have a pump bottle beside you for water, and sip on it. Now, sipping, there's several reasons for that. The first one is that in order to drink, you have to breathe. So it does slow your breathing down because you are taking in air to breathe. So that's your perfect. The second one is it's a nurturing feeling. So it's almost like the breastfeeding. It does settle you down because it's nurturing. You are allowing yourself to partake of a liquid. So it's nice and nurturing, and it slows you down and keeps you breathing. And it's funny because I remember my mum always had a cup of tea, especially if there was a stressful situation. She would say, put the jug on and we'll have a cup of tea. And looking back, I can see how it really would have helped, because it's that breathing and slowing you down and a nurturing feeling. So, yeah, keep a pump bottle beside you. Number 2, really good thing to do. Well, I think number 1 probably should be understand what's going on in your brain. But, so that's the first 2. The next one is sorry, got a bit lost then. Yeah, so this is what happens when your brain is not working properly. Your prefrontal lobe turns off. And mine just did. So, yeah. So, anyway, there we go. So, stress, yes, you have to fake it till you make it. Take deep breaths, drink water. And, the obvious ones that everybody knows is get good diet, good exercise. Those are all fairly obvious ones. Meditate, turning that limbic zone down and settling it down, so it's telling you that it's not needing to be in survival mode. Meditation or a prayer or whatever you feel is the appropriate thing for you, and just quiet reading even, that settles the limbic zone down, and again that tells you that your brain is settled. Now, the next critical one, see, I've remembered now, the next critical one is routine. Routine is critical for your brain to tell you that things are safe, things are okay, and, we're ticking along nicely. So keeping a good routine, and that often goes out the window when we're stressed. When we're stressed, we can either sleep too much, sleep not enough, eat too much, eat too little. So keeping a good routine tells your body yet again that you're okay. So predictability and routine are really critical in managing your stress levels. Okay, now those are 4 of the first key stress level situations for you. I'm going to do some more, but I thought I'd talk a little bit. This is a Rotary show. However, we're all humans in Rotary, so that's why I'm talking about the physiology of stress and how that impacts on us. But Rotary is why we're here. This is Rotary Matters. I've been a Rotarian for, well over 14 years. Absolutely love it. So, if your New Year's goal is to join a club or become a Rotarian, give us a call. Ring 0800 for Rotary, or look us up on Facebook. Where all of the clubs in Masterton have got Facebook pages. There's Carterton, South Wairarapa, there's Masterton South, and there's Masterton. So you can look any of those up on Facebook or on the website, rotary.org, and you can find a whole lot about Rotary. That is, so number 5 in the stress level management is having connections with other humans, keeping those connections strong, and being a Rotarian is a really good one for that. I had my brother many years ago was diagnosed with cancer, and he survived it, but he thought, I wonder what it is that people do that make them live longer. So in a non-scientific way, he just thought he would go out and find out what it is that the people that he knew that lived long lives did everyone was in common with every one of them. And he found the first one was that they all had a veggie garden. There's positive ions in in soil, so if you get down in the soil, you create positive ions that go through your system, and they benefit you in minimising depression. So it makes you feel good. So that's a really good idea for doing veggie gardens. The second one is it's good physical exercise, getting out and stretching and lifting and hoeing and raking. It's really good physical exercise. And the third one is gives you food, which is healthy organic food. So that was number 1 was that they all had a veggie garden. Number 2 was that they all were part of a group. So whether it be a church community or a Rotary community or in a retirement village, they were all part of a group. So those human connections with each other were critical. So that's what he discovered. And of course, research has proven him correct. So his anecdotal research backed up, the research backs up his anecdotal findings. So, when you're thinking about what goals to set, think about some of those important things that will help you live a longer and healthier life. So we might have another bit of Bublé, another piece of music, and when we come back I'll talk a little bit about setting goals and the advantages of that, and how to set goals so they become manageable and achievable without putting huge pressure on us. So a little bit more Bublé.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I am telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He's making a list, he's checking it twice, he's gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping, and he knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I am telling you why. 'Cause Santa Claus is coming to town. You when you're sleeping, and he knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. You better watch You better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming, I mean the big fat man with the long white beard. He's coming to town.
Right, there we go. A little bit more Michael Bublé for you. Even if you haven't had it, if you've had enough over Christmas, we still can never have enough of Michael Bublé and his beautiful voice. So it's Donna here on Arrow FM 92.7, and I'm speaking on behalf of Rotary Matters. So you can see the lovely rotary wheel on the bottom of the screen, that side there. Didn't do that so well. Yeah, so Rotary Matters, if you're interested in joining Rotary or coming to visit, and I always suggest that you come and spend some time with each different club because they're quite different, and find out a little bit about each one. So if you're considering it, go and share a meal with the different clubs and get a feel of each club. So we're talking about stress management today, and I've talked about the limbic zone and the prefrontal lobe in your brain, and how your prefrontal lobe, which is the thinking part of your brain, turns off when you're stressed. And your limbic zone, which is your emotional part of your brain, sort of gets into hyperaction. So the first suggestion was to ensure that you drink water, and it's nurturing, that you make sure that you are predictable, have routines, and that you breathe. So those are really important facts. There's some interesting brain facts for you. So I never remember them off the top of my head, so I'll read them to you. But it's just the brain is an incredibly fascinating computer that keeps us running, really. So did you know that there are 100 billion brain cells, and that you were actually born with the exact right amount of brain cells? It is the connections between the brain cells that happen after birth, or that make the difference to who we are. So 100 billion brain cells, or neurons. And your average brain is 7.5 kilos heavy. So that's quite a bit of weight. That's considerably heavy. And it takes up a large percentage of our energy, and that's one of the reasons why we became meat eaters. We became bipedal and started eating meat, because our brain started taking more and more energy because of the size of it as we became who we are today. So you're born with all of the neurons, and a 2-year-old and a teen, and I've done shows in the past when we've talked about, 2-year-old tantrums and teenagers. That 14-year-old is a really critical stage. So I said that you were born with the same amount of neurons that you have right through your life, and the connections are the things that you build on. So for the first 2 years of your life, you're building all these connections, huge connections all over the place, with all this learning, massive amounts of learning from zero to 2. And then your brain decides it's going to have a clean out. So it says there's so much of these connections that we don't need. So it kind of reorganises the shop window, so to speak. And that's, a challenging time for 2-year-olds. That tends to be when the 2-year-old tantrums start hitting, and so the brain is kind of cleaning itself out, getting rid of all of these connections that have been made that they don't use, and strengthening the ones that are really important. And then we start, once that's all settled, we start again building all these connections for another huge learning process. When you become a young teenager, usually around 14, or it tends to be a wee bit earlier nowadays, exactly the same thing happens again. Your brain has another massive clean out, tidies up the shop window, and anyone that's parented teenagers will remember that 14-year-old age. It's 2-year-olds and 14-year-olds. They act very similar. So that's what's happening in their brain. That's really just cleaning out what they don't need and getting prepared for the next stages in their life. So that's really interesting facts. 250,000 brain cells forming every minute during early pregnancy. And of course, that's why you take care of yourself when you're first pregnant, because those brain cells are forming every minute, 250,000 every minute. So you can imagine if you're doing things that are not so healthy for the bubby, then they're not so great. So if we spread the connections of our brain out long way, they would circle Earth 14 times. So our brain is quite big. So I'm sure you've all seen a brain when they're all lumpy bumpy and sort of look like worms. That is so that they can fit a lot of brain into your head. If you spread that all out, it would fit stretched out onto a table, but the amount of neurons, connections, would go around the Earth 14 times. What other interesting one have we got? So the definition of stress. This is the correct definition for what stress is, because we can use stress, in lots of different areas. But so it is a non-specific response to any pressure or demand. It's a whole response. It's mind and body together. So it's a non-specific response to any pressure or demand, and it's a whole response, mind and body. That is the formal definition of stress. And we've just had Christmas, and as I said before, we do put some pressure on ourselves. So some of us may be feeling a bit sort of after Christmas, and hence why I thought I'll do a session on stress and give you some tips and ideas. So there's 5 major stresses. Firstly, there's the obvious one of illness. So if you're unwell, that's a stress on you, and that can certainly put extra stresses on your life as well. But just being ill adds stress to your body. Moving and change. So psychologists say that shifting or moving or a change of job, etc., is one of the highest. One of the triggers for huge stress. And transitions, I know change and transitions, that's all the same sort of thing really. Interesting thing I heard the other day, you know how you walk from one room to another to go and get something, and you get to the other room and you've completely forgotten what it was you were going for? That is quite normal. And although they still really don't know what the true reason for it is, they believe that there is a reason for it, because our brain does everything for a reason, for a survival reason. So they are feeling, psychologists think that is a transition from one room to another, and there is a reason why your memory weakens between that transition for the two, and it's probably around a survival mechanism. So I just thought that was an interesting one, because I have that all the time. I don't know how many times I walk into a room and go, what am I in here for? I have no idea. So it's quite normal. Do not worry about that. And obviously the best thing to do, as we know, is to go back to where you started, and that will bring back that memory. Now, work is another stress that people have. Even if you enjoy your work, it's still a stress in some parts of it. And relationships is the next one. So that's another area that can create stress, good stress, bad stress. And loss, that's an obvious one. Grief and loss is a big one, isn't it? Of course, one of the things which is new for us now from caveman days, and as I said before, is around sort of internal thoughts and external events. So checking your emails, all of those sort of self-biases that we have ourselves, those sorts of things. So we have lots of internal thoughts of things that get triggered by things externally, but they weren't necessarily around caveman days. So, the stresses, our modern day stresses are quite different, as I have said. Just reading my notes because there's a lot on stress. So when your brain and your body are running at an optimum, there is a real balance there. So we have hormones in our system, and the idea is to keep those hormones in a good balance. So we'll talk about, we have hormones, we have adrenaline, we have cortisol, we have oxytocin, we have serotonin, we have dopamine, and I'm not sure if that's the only one we have. That's it. So, and they're all there for adrenaline. That's the other one. They're all there for a reason. So, and I always go back to caveman days. Well, the reality is that's why we are, that's where we've come from. So the reason, if I can explain it within the caveman days, the first one is adrenaline. So we had to go out and find those dinosaurs to collect the eggs or kill for meat to take back to our families. We needed adrenaline to do that, to get us out there and get us going. If we got hurt, adrenaline keeps you going. So, and endorphins, if you got hurt, they stop the pain. Runners talk about hitting the wall when they and then they get through that and then they carry on. That's the endorphins hitting so that there's no pain or little pain. So you can keep going. Our body is designed to keep going in those situations. And then there's cortisol, which is rushes into your system when you're hurt and running and frightened, and we all know about cortisol rushing around our system. We need it. That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps it makes inflammation. So if you're hurt, it'll inflame things, so you're not bleeding as much. Your wounds will become inflamed and swollen, so that they start healing and not bleeding. So that's what cortisol's designed to do. Then, of course, once you get back to the cave with your eggs and your little dinosaur that you're going to cook up for the family, you've still got all of these running around in your body, the system, and so then you start wanting to heal and recover. And so you need a bit of oxytocin, which is the love drug. So that's, you're feeling like you're feeding your family. So you're starting to feel really good. And so you're building up that oxytocin in your body and starting to sort of slow things down a bit. And dopamine. Dopamine is a reward drug, hormone. So dopamine gives you the reward and makes you, want to go back out, basically. So that's the reward one. And I have to stop saying don't I? So what the idea is to have happy balance with those. The most dangerous one really for our bodies is cortisol, because what happens is that if it stays in our body for too long, it becomes like a weed killer, and it kills neuron connections, particularly new ones. So too much cortisol in our system is not a good thing. So we need the cortisol. It comes in, it floods our system, it causes inflammation, as I said. So if you keep that cortisol in your system for too long, that inflammation, of course, can turn into arthritises and cancers, all sorts of things like that. So that is where cortisol becomes quite dangerous. And that one of the critical reasons why we have got to take care of our stress levels and keep our hormone levels, all of these hormones, in a nice tidy balance. So your oxytocin, your love drug, so that's your relationships and building connections with other groups and clubs and really trying to, do that oxytocin. Your dopamine is your reward one. Having healthy habits and healthy, things that reward you chemically, cycling or cooking or all of those sorts of things, and they'll give you some dopamine and rewards, stuff that blows your hair back, things that you really enjoy, making sure that they're nice and healthy. Cortisol we need. We've got to have cortisol in our system. That's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's the stress hormone. We do have to have it, but as I said before, the concern is if it's in your body way too long. That's when it's dangerous. So you want a really healthy amount. And this is going back to what my brother was saying about people that lived a long time with his little non-scientific study, that they did gardens, they did physical work, they had good social connections. Well, all of those involve managing those hormones in their body. So, yeah, there we go. That's hopefully really helpful. We'll talk a little bit more after another piece of music, and it's going to be Buble all the way through this hour, whether you like it or not, because that's what I'm playing. So we're going to play a little bit more Buble on... it's his Christmas album, which I'll put up there and show you because I just love him. And you can sit back and settle yourself down and listen to it and fill yourself with some nice oxytocin, have a nice healthy drink beside you, a pump pot of water, and give yourself some rewards by pumping it up to your body, hand up to your mouth and filling yourself with lots of dopamine, and take some deep breaths, and then we'll come back and I promise you we will talk about goal setting next.
Merry Christmas, ladies.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Buble.
Are you ready to sing a little jingle bells?
Yes.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. All the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Jingle bells, just jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what a lot of fun to ride and sing in a one-horse open sleigh.
Dashing through the snow,
We are dashing
in a one-horse open sleigh.
one-horse sleigh.
All the fields we go,
All the fields we go,
laughing all the way.
all the way.
Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. Oh, what fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open. Oh, what fun. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, oh, what fun in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way.
Well, it's Donna back again in Rotary Matters on Arrow FM. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It was a nice version of Jingle Bells. We've been talking about stress, and the build-up over Christmas does create a lot of stress for us. So I've given some tips on how you can manage your stress levels but also how you can, why you need to manage your levels, how your brain works. This is sort of a 101 of stress management, really. And so now we're going to talk about goal setting, because after Christmas, of course, is the new year. And what do we all do on New Year, apart from celebrate it with our family and friends, is we create goals. We always start thinking about what we're going to do for the next 52 weeks, and start setting some New Year's resolutions. Now, I don't know about any of you out there, but I'm not sure if I've ever remembered what my New Year's resolution is by February and or carried it through, because what I tended to do was just make sort of either flippant goals that I wasn't really serious about, or I made unrealistic goals that I just weren't able to keep. And I remember one of them was, can you make me... Last year I asked to be... No, I've forgotten it now. I'll have to think about that when I get back to you, but it was a rather funny little one. But anyway, goal setting. So I'm going to give you some tips on when it comes to 1st of January and how to set some goals. So the important thing to do is to make SMART goals, SMART goals. So by doing SMART goals, you are making them much more realistic. So the S in SMART means being specific. So making sure that the goals that you do are quite clear. And as I said before, I tended to make whimsical goals that, just didn't mean anything really. I'm going to have a big fat wallet by the end of the year. I mean, that's not specific. It doesn't mean anything. So making sure your goals are specific. Now one of the ones I think probably half of the people that set goals say is I'm going to lose weight. Now that's not specific either, because the losing weight is the product at the end. And it's the same with the big fat wallet. It's what you get at the end. It is not the goal itself. So you've got to be specific. So rather than say you want to lose weight, you want to say I'm going to drink a litre of water and eat 3 pieces of fruit 3 times a week. So it's very specific. And of course, the reality is if you carry on with that, you will lose weight. So being specific. The next one is being measurable, M. So the SM, M for measurable. So if you say, I'm going to lose weight, I mean, how do you measure that? So you need to say, okay, so let's be specific here. So I am going to eat 3 pieces of fruit a day for 3 days a week, for 3 days a week. That's the specific part. So I'm going to eat fruit and I'm going to eat them 3 days a week. Nice and easy, measurable, so I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And then the next one, SMA, A is achievable. So can you do it? Is it achievable? So that is achievable. 3 pieces of fruit 3 times a week is quite an achievable goal. But if you said I'm going to eat 6 pieces of fruit and veg 7 days a week, that's probably not achievable, because by the end of it you'll be wanting just one blobby meal, and you just will feel bad about yourself and feel like you haven't succeeded, and you'll give up your goal altogether. So my goal is to eat 3 pieces of fruit 3 times a week, and that is achievable. The next one is it realistic? I'm just making sure my phone's back on. Is that a realistic goal? Well, absolutely. I can manage that. So is my goal realistic? That's the R. And the T at the end of the SMART word is time bound. And that is, I am going to do this 3 days a week for a month. So, yeah, choose a goal. If it is, for example, to get my learner's license, so getting your learner's license, that doesn't mean anything. How are you going to do that? So if you want to make it a SMART goal, you make it specific. So I'm going to get my learner's license by February. Make it measurable. There's your February. get my learner's licence by February. Is it attainable? So look at, can I afford to get my licence? Do I have the vehicle ready? All of those things to make it achievable. Realistic. Again, that's, am I being real? Is February going to work? Should I make it March or April? So make sure that it's a realistic goal. But set yourself that time bound. Don't say, I'll do it sometime this year. That's not going to work. You're going to need to set a realistic time. So I'm going to get my licence by March in my mother's car, and in January, February, I'm going to put the money aside so that I can pay for it. And there's your SMART goal. So, yeah, when you are sitting there on New Year's Day or after New Year's Eve, trying to think, what will my next year look like? Then think, okay, am I doing SMART goals? Are they SMART? Are they specific, measurable, attainable, realistic and time-bound? And that will help you. And then once that goal's achieved, you can set another goal. I quite like to have, 3 small goals that are sort of 1 week, 1 month, and 3 long-term goals, sort of 1 year, 5 years. So, set yourself and then change them once they're done. Now, I think one of the important things to realise is that life does happen. And so if things happen and you haven't achieved your goal, then you need to reassess. What was it that happened that blocked me from achieving that goal? So you can do some problem solving around that. So if it was, I'm going to ride my bike twice a week for 1 kilometre, and then of course after a month you think, gosh, I haven't even got on my bike. Well, problem solve around that. Why was it that you did not get on your bike? Was it that you have a fear of being on the road with traffic? Was it that your bike's chain is broken, or any of those sorts of things? So really think about what it is that prevented you from achieving that goal, and then problem solve around that. What can I do to change that? So, the biking one's a good one. So am I being realistic with cycling? If I don't feel safe on traffic, do I change it to swimming? That's doesn't have the traffic flowing around. If it's that your bike isn't working properly, is it possible to borrow a bike from somebody, or get this one fixed, or go to the op shop or the shop and purchase a new one if you're really serious about it? So really problem solve about what it is that why you haven't achieved that goal. But also, last and foremost, look, life happens, and sometimes you set goals and they just don't make it. So put it aside and try again another time. Don't kick yourself. Don't start feeling bad. All of that self-negative talk about, I was always told I was a failure, and Mr. La-di-da from Wairarapa College told me I'd never be able to achieve this, and he's right, So really start to think about, don't just put it aside. Don't be hard on yourself. Just put it aside. So those stress and goal setting are the 2 things that I was going to talk about today. But we do have a little bit of time left. So what I can finish on is just talking about journaling, really, because that's kind of my passion. I love journaling. I've journaled all my life. It kind of started when I was quite young, just writing scrappy journaly things, but then as a teenager and a young adult, I got quite serious about it, and I would journal a lot. I probably stopped, when my children were getting to that stage where I just went to bed exhausted and didn't journal very much at all. But journaling's been around since the 10th century in Japan, and they have done scientific studies to prove that there are lymphocytes in your body that get triggered when you journal, and these chemical this chemical reaction can minimise asthma and arthritis and respiratory issues. It has been proven by research that journaling is physically good for you. Quite frankly, I just do it because I feel good afterwards. It really does make you feel good. So there's some really good ways to journal. You start small. If you've never journaled before and you feel that it's something you might like to try, don't just start massive. Start small, 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes, there's one of your measurable goals. Make sure it's measurable and achievable and realistic and time-bound. So I'm going to journal 10 minutes 3 times a week for, each evening. So, start little, and there are 8 areas of human existence. So having a look at all of those areas, and they are physical, work, relationships, intimacy, hobbies, spirituality, your intellect, and I've forgotten the other ones, but you're more than welcome to contact me afterwards. I'll give you my details at the end of the show, and you can make contact with me and we can talk them through. So you try and think about all of the areas in your life and just write something little about each one. So the key points I want to express is you want to be able to write so that you're not thinking about who might read it. So confidentiality and privacy. So think about where you're going to keep it. Is it that people, you don't, if you are worried about people reading it, you're not keeping it in a good place. So you want to be able to write freely without thinking about who's going to read it, because it's your thoughts. That's a good point. You need to make sure that you're just going with the flow. You don't need to worry about grammar or spelling or anything like that. Just make sure that you just relax and start writing. And then it'll slowly start flowing. It may come out in a great big waterfall, or it may be just slow. But one way or the other, it'll start coming out and you'll start finding the benefits. You don't have to read back on your journal, but if I have in the past, and you can learn from, past things that you've written in your journal. If you start looking back, and if you're in a situation you think, gosh, how did I deal with that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, or haven't I come a long way from then, or I didn't do so well organising that, perhaps I could do better this time. Those reflection times and looking at those. I just find journaling probably one of the most relaxing things. I do tend to do it more when things aren't going so well for me, and when things are going well, I don't tend to journal so much. But everybody's different, of course, and there are some very well-known people that have journaled. Winston Churchill, Edmund Hillary, the obvious one, Anne Frank, the not-so-great one to mention, Hitler, but Ronald Reagan was another one. All of these people journaled, and I think that if you want to start, to by all means do, to consider the privacy and just make a start. If you want to give a gift, that's a great idea as well. Buying a beautiful journal for somebody and a lovely pen, and is really giving them a gift, a lifelong gift that they will, and hopefully, really enjoy. You can Google great ideas on journaling so that you can put some neat ideas in there. You can buy journals that have got little tips in them as well, so that they can, journal a little bit more structured. So if someone wants a journal that's actually got what they're giving them some tips and ideas on what to write on, that's a wonderful gift for someone. So, although you only had me, and it's a difficult time of year to get guests, I'm speaking on behalf of Rotary, and of course the clubs are kind of closing down this time of the year. They're all having their Christmas break, and we'll be back in mid-January. Again, if you're interested in becoming a Rotarian or visiting a Rotary Club, just have a look on their Facebook pages, Google Rotary or ring 0800 4Rotary or go to rotary.org or just go on Facebook and go Rotary Marsden and Rotary Carterton and they will come up. They're all quite different clubs. They're all wonderful clubs. So I'm sure you'll find someone that will make you feel quite at home in the club and go and visit. So that's me. My stress management workshops that I run, part of my business, Motu Oru Development Services. And so if you want a little bit more information and knowledge on stress management or time management or journaling or brain development, you could have a look on my Facebook page, Motu Oru Development. Now, motu means to be unbogged. Oru means to be stepping forward, not stuck down. So I like to say that Motu Oru means moving forward. And we're moving forward because it's the new year and going to set some goals, going to write some journaling and make sure my stress levels are all in order. Have a wonderful time, guys, out there this holidays. Be safe, don't get too sunburnt and enjoy the rest of the holidays and we'll catch you next time. So bye for now from Donna from Rotary Matters.